You're here. Welcome to the Masterminding Success podcast. They say if you want to be successful in business and in life, then surround yourself with successful people. So pull up a seat. The mastermind is about to begin.
Hey, glad you could join us for another episode of the Masterminding Success podcast. We're your host, Keith Wheeler.
And Nuria Colby.
And what are we talking about today, Nuria?
Today is another very interesting topic, and it's Amazon alternatives. And I'm sure we've all wondered whether there are any other places we can publish on. So that's our topic for today.
Yeah. I know that, Amazon is the 600-pound gorilla in the room, but they're not the only game in town. And there are plenty of people out there that absolutely avoid Amazon at all costs. And whether you want to sell on Amazon or not, and take advantage of the traffic that they have, you can do that without actually publishing on Amazon. So, maybe, we talked in a previous episode about getting your, KDP accounts terminated and things like that. So whatever your reason, if you'd like an alternative to Amazon, there are some out there. And we've had some experience with them. And I know you had experience with one very recently.
Well, literally today. I've never published off Amazon. I've always published on Amazon before. But I thought, well, it's time that I find out what it's like to publish somewhere else. And also because I want to help other people. And I thought, well, there's not much help I can offer. People keep asking me, are there any alternatives to Amazon? And I know there are alternatives, but I actually haven't published on them myself. So right. I feel like I'm lacking the experience and the knowledge to be able to advise other people. So I thought I'd take the plunge and try one of the other platforms out. So I've been watching lots and lots of YouTube channels, including yours as well. And there's just a range of different platforms out there. Yeah. And today I published my book, which I haven't told people about yet, but I will announce it on my YouTube channel soon, that I've written a book about branding.
Hearing it here first, people.
Yeah, we hear exclusive on the podcast. And I thought, well, I've published it on Amazon. I've done the ebook. Let's see if there's any other places. And I was very careful not to tick expanded distribution on Amazon, because I heard that was the wrong thing to do, because obviously I want other platforms to do that for me. So that's what I did. And I published on Draft to Digital. And I looked into IngramSpark. I looked into BookVault. I looked into all sorts of other platforms. And the only reason I chose Draft to Digital was because it seemed easier. That's me all over. Whatever's easiest, I go for that. But I know that other authors publish on lots of them. They publish on IngramSpark, on Amazon, on Draft to Digital. So it must be possible to do that. So I'm just going through all the information and taking it step by step. And I'll be able to tell people how that's going later on. But so far, so good. I've managed to upload the ebook and the paperback on Draft to Digital. But I know you've got far more experience than me.
Yeah, Draft to Digital is a good choice. It's what we call an aggregate publisher. So, you publish it on one and they just send it out to so many different places. And the fact that you can get your book into libraries and places like that with Draft to Digital, that's one of the reasons why I like to use them. But yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to every publishing platform. Yeah. But yeah, what you did as far as like not selecting the expanded distribution with KDP, yeah, that was a good idea, because with when it comes to places like Draft to Digital, the stuff the publishing wide part of it, the other platforms, you're going to get higher royalties back than you do through KDP's expanded distribution.
Yeah.
And then when you publish on Draft to Digital or IngramSpark or Lulu or wherever, then typically you'll deselect the Amazon option because you already have it on Amazon through KDP, and you're going to get a higher royalty from KDP directly than you will from places like Draft to Digital. So yeah, I mean, so many people think that, there's just one way to do it and one platform. And like I said, there's pros and cons to all of them. Draft to Digital is one that, like you said, is very easy to use. And I mean, you can even format your book in their platform, and then you can download it from there, even if you don't publish through them, which is just crazy, that they're letting you use their system and their software that they have to format your book. And then you could do that and still publish with, KDP, or publish with Barnes and Noble or IngramSpark or wherever.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
It was so easy. I mean, and the other thing I really liked is that once I did my paperback first, and then there was an option to just transfer it as an ebook. And now I've got the option to make it into an audiobook, which I haven't done yet, but I'm going to look into that next. So maybe what we should say, though, is that this is not for low content books. This is for either fiction or non-fiction. I don't know if they would accept low content. I think.
So with Draft to Digital is currently, when it comes to the print version, just specifically the print version, you can't do they don't do color, because
That's right.
the page type, the weight of it is thinner than what would really look good with the ink from color ink. And so children's books, and typically I don't know if they would kick back a no content or low content book. I wouldn't publish on it because of that thin paper. And if people are using markers, it may bleed through. And so I don't know if that's a limitation to them, like they won't allow it. But that's just something, thinking of the quality for my end user, that's a reason why I don't publish that type of book through them.
Absolutely.
But other, if you're doing no content, low content books, especially things like puzzle books, if you want spiral bound, lulu.com, it does an amazing job, spiral bound. There are some downsides again to it. The main thing is that with the spiral bound specifically, Amazon won't allow that on their, like, at least directly. There's ways around it, but directly, like, you can't just promote it to, push it through to Amazon. Whereas with the Lulu and any other kind of book or ebook, you can, just not the spiral bound. And it's just because, for whatever reason, Amazon doesn't accept it. But yeah, I mean, and then IngramSpark is a great option, especially if you want to get your books into physical, like, big bookstores, because you can get, I mean, even KDP books, you can get that into independent stores. I've done it dozens of times, and even in cities and states I've never been in. But as far as, like, if you want to get into like a Barnes and Noble and that kind of stuff, the IngramSpark is a great way to do it, because they allow for returns, which is a huge thing, and they allow for wholesale pricing, which are two things that big bulk stores like that are looking for.
Yeah. The only reason I say the only reason, but there's several reasons I didn't go for IngramSpark directly, is because I've heard a lot of things that I feel could be a potential problem. You mentioned returns, and there's been cases where the author has offered returns, because I also heard that if you don't offer returns, it's unlikely that those big stores will buy, because obviously they want to be able to return the books if they're not selling. And I've heard these horror stories from people that have offered returns, and then suddenly they've had all their books sent back and they had to pay for them, which has cost them thousands of dollars. And that was one of the reasons that I didn't go with IngramSpark. And I know you can not offer returns. You have the option not to offer returns, which would be fine. And I might still do that. But then I don't know whether those big stores would order my book from IngramSpark if I don't offer returns. And that was the only reason. And also because I heard that their customer service, I'm sorry to say that, but that's what I heard, their customer service wasn't that great. There's been no end of problems with people trying to get resolution, and they seem to be passing the back to Amazon or to whoever else, and then Amazon passed the back to IngramSpark. And I thought, oh, let's avoid that right from the start.
Yeah. No, those are fair, fair ideas. I haven't had to deal with customer service with the IngramSpark, so I can't say one way or the other. But I agree with you that if you're not going to utilize because if you don't allow for returns, there's a really good chance that big stores are not going to get your book, because to be honest, they have, a finite amount of space on their shelves, and they want to know that if they buy, 10 copies of your book and they don't sell in 3 months, that they can return those and get either credit from Ingram or get their money back so they can find something else. And so I agree completely that if you don't want to utilize that option, which, I mean, the horror story that you told me, I can absolutely understand, who wants to dish out that kind of money, but, and pay back for multiple, all the returns. But if you don't take that option, then, and there's little to no chance that big bulk stores are going to pick up your book, then I understand that there may not be much of a reason to use Ingram over the others, because while Ingram's quality is top notch, Drafted Digitals is pretty, is right up there with them as well. And so, there's a couple places that, from my experience, and I can only speak from my own experience, that the quality of the books aren't as good. But like, I'm not a big fan of Barnes and Noble's quality of their physical books, at least the times I've used them. Now, granted, I haven't used them in a year or two because of that. But yeah, I mean, there are so many options out there. And again, that's why I said there's pros and cons to each of them. And it really comes down to what your goals are and what you want, what in the end, what do you want? Now, IngramSpark has tried to eliminate some of that resistance by no longer charging an upload charge, but they also, if you make changes to a published book, then it's $25. And so, that's something to keep in mind. I know that Drafted Digital does something similar, but they give you one change during a certain period of time.
90
and so
days,
it's kind of 90 days. Yeah. So it's kind of a hybrid where it's like, okay, you can make a change, but if you make too many changes, then that's when you're going to start getting charged. And I think that's fair, because, in the end, your customers aren't going to want to buy a book that's going to change, in, a week either. So.
Yeah, I mean, I can only talk from the very little experience that I've had today, but from listening to YouTube videos, and I've watched a lot, to be honest.
Sure.
And it looks like there's pros and cons to everybody, but with IngramSpark, obviously the pros are, I've heard their quality is good. They've got the biggest distribution, and especially like for the UK as well, because Barnes and Noble are only for the US, for example. So people in the UK probably wouldn't choose that in particular. But so IngramSpark is obviously blowing everybody out of the water when it comes to their distribution reach and all of that. And the only negatives were really the customer service and the returns. So other than that, and they also said that it wasn't that their dashboard wasn't very clear. So compared to KDP is apparently a lot easier and a lot more user-friendly. Using Drafted Digital today, I found their dashboard very user-friendly. That was very easy. I mean, I don't know about reports and that. I haven't had the chance to look into that yet. But as far as the upload is concerned, it was very, very easy. And like you said, they even format your book for you. So I had already formatted mine, so there weren't many options that I could use. But if you haven't formatted your book, it's brilliant. It's really, really, really easy. And it looks like their distribution isn't isn't bad either. You know, there seems to be a lot more that you can do with them than with Amazon's expanded distribution.
Yeah, and a really good thing about Draft to Digital, especially their distribution, is they're always adding new people on. New companies are always adding on, and to add your book or books into a new platform that they bring out, you know, a new end user, it's literally a click of a button. You know, I'll log in and I'll get this screen that pops up and says that they've now, you know, had a deal with so and so. Hoopla was one that they did, and
right,
and then they literally just say, if you'd like to add your books into Hoopla, you can either, and there's a button that says add all my books, or I want to do it manually, where you can just pick and choose. And with Hoopla in particular, I did decide to pick and choose because there were pros and cons to their particular offering. But with most of the other ones, I just go, you know, apply to all. And it's just, it's so smooth. And they also have the books to read. So they've got one link, and that one link, you know, if someone's reading your ebook specifically, if someone's reading your ebook on, you know, a Kindle device or whatever, then they, you know, instead of having to have multiple links, it's literally one link, and they click on it and it brings them to whatever platform they're reading it on to check out your next book. And then you can there's so much stuff that you can add to the end, you know, from the author, so you don't have to keep updating the interior of your book. There's so many different options. So you chose wisely with Draft to Digital. but yeah, like I said, I mean, other platforms that I love working with Lulu. I love I've worked with IngramSpark, and like you said, the quality is pretty top notch, and you really can't argue with their distribution as far as physical stores, you know.
That's right.
And, yeah.
I think we should also mention that it's best if you have your own ISBN if you're publishing on several platforms, because if you use Amazon's free ISBN, then you can't really do that. You would have to have your own ISBN that you can then use on all of those platforms. And also each format, if your paperback has to have a different ISBN than your ebook, for example. So that was one of the things that I think is important as well. But here's a question for you, Keith. If I've now got my book on Amazon and on Draft to Digital, can I now publish it also on IngramSpark? And are there any reasons why I should do that or not do that?
Okay, so that's a great question. So with IngramSpark, if you're going to do that, I mean, I wouldn't do the global distribution through them, since you already have that covered with Draft to Digital. It would mainly be to get into those big bookstores, and so you absolutely can still do it. Again, it would be, and I do want to get back to the ISBNs in a second, but I would, you know, you'd make sure that you're only doing it for the physical book, and that you're picking the distribution that is going to be the less invasive, and so there's not a lot of crossover, because you don't want to end up confusing any algorithm whatsoever. And so and then obviously, because if you're really caring about being in bookstores, that's when you would do the wholesale pricing and all that, and the returns and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's absolutely possible. Now about the ISBNs, just to clarify, technically you could still do the free ISBNs. Like if you get the free KDP ISBN, and I use that for let's say my paperback, and then I go to Lulu, I can get their free ISBN and use that and publish more wide there, which anyway, but then you'd have it would be a different ISBN for that same book. So you'd have to change the interior of your book to make sure that you're doing so when you publish on Lulu, you'd have to put the Lulu ISBN, and when you publish on KDP, you'd have to do the KDP ISBN. So it's possible, but it's a lot more work. It looks a lot less professional, because these things all get as you know, everything on the internet's there forever, right?
Mm.
And so the whole thing about an ISBN is it's kind of like the unique serial number for your book, and it specifies the type of book, the actual format of it, the title, where it was published, and all of that. And when all of that is really the same on a separate book, but it's got a different ISBN, again, it doesn't look as professional.
No.
So I absolutely would agree that, especially if you're going to go across, using different platforms, I would definitely get your own ISBN. And if you can afford it, buying in bulk is always more financially a better idea.
Definitely.
You get bigger discount.
Yeah, I did that. Here in the UK, you buy your ISBNs from Nielsen. And I know in the US, it's Bowker. And it's very important that everybody finds out their official distributor of ISBNs in their own country. And I know there are other companies that sell ISBNs, but it's a bit not that good to buy them off other companies, because you never know what you're getting there. That's how I understand it. So always look for the official seller of ISBNs for your country. And Nielsen in the UK has been pretty good. So the more you buy in bulk, the cheaper it gets. I think one ISBN is quite expensive, and unless I know that my book is going to sell thousands and thousands of copies, I wouldn't do that. So I bought 100 ISBNs for one of my imprints and 10 ISBNs for another one. And the imprint is basically your publishing company name. That's how I've set it up. Yeah. Right. So it's not your pen name. It's more sort of the publisher. So when you upload your book on Amazon, it usually says independently published if you're using Amazon's ISBN. But if you're using your own, then it will use the imprint that you have given your book. And I think that is another good way of branding your books, by having a company name or a brand name as your imprint. And that way you can have different imprints for different and different pen names as well for different imprints. So it's a way to categorize your publishing company, I guess. Yeah.
And just to be clear, when you're talking about imprints, that you can have one imprint and still publish multiple pen names under that imprint.
Yeah.
Just think of it as a business name. The imprint is your business name, whereas the author name is whatever author name you want to put. And so it basically, from a customer perspective, it just looks like all, if they're prolific readers and you're always publishing in the same niche, and they notice that the imprint is there, again, because you're trying to build a brand and you want to get that brand awareness, then it just looks like there's multiple authors that publish under that, with that same business. So it doesn't have to be, now I can only publish, I have to publish 100 books, because I use this one imprint. I have to publish 100 books under this author name. No, you can use multiple pen names if you want, depending on what your needs are. But the imprint would be whatever you use to buy the name. And again, when you buy through the official place, in your country, then you get to set that imprint. Whereas if you buy it from one of these side places that are going to be cheaper typically, but that means that whatever they put as the imprint, because they bought it, they bought it from whoever, typically they probably bought it through the official, and so their name is whatever they decided to put is going to be the imprint. So if you buy it from them, they can't change the imprint. And so you're going to be publishing your books with their ISBNs, and the imprint is going to be whatever they put there. So you're actually promoting them instead of promoting your own brand. So that's a great point.
That's a very important point, because for me, for example, the reason I buy my own ISBNs, other than what we just said about, being able to publish on different platforms, the main reason is because I want to brand my books under a publishing company. So I can do that if my imprint is that company, but if it's somebody else's, then I lose total control over who my brand is. So yeah, that's a very, very important point.
Yeah. And just, I know we talked about ISBNs a lot, and I don't want to confuse people. So I just want to clarify that if you buy your own ISBN, you can use the same ISBN across multiple platforms as long as it's the same format. So if you have, an 8.5 by 11 paperback, wherever you publish that, you can use that same ISBN. Now, if you change it to a hardcover, or you change the trim size or whatever, then you would need a new ISBN. But if it's the same format, then you use an ISBN that you purchased, you can use that same one across multiple platforms. It just makes, like I said, it makes, first of all, continuity, keeping everything, across the board similar, but also it just makes easier because, like I said, you don't have to go in and change the ISBN on your copyright page or anything like that.
That's right. I always think of ISBNs as a passport. It's very similar to a passport, because your passport is just for you, and you can take that passport and travel to all these different countries, but somebody else can't use your passport. So an ISBN is very similar, because one book can be published on all these different platforms, but if it's a different book, which it would be if it's an ebook, or if it's a different format, different size, it would be different, then it needs a different ISBN. So I kind of think of it that way when I'm not quite clear about what I can do with it. So yeah, it's important to have a separate ISBN for each format. And that's why I bought them in bulk, because it just works out so much cheaper. I think I bought 100 ISBNs, and they work out at about £3 each, roughly. I can't remember exactly, it was a while ago. But it's so much cheaper than buying one ISBN, which can be quite expensive for one book. And then if you need the ebook as well and all that. Although ebooks, I think, don't necessarily need one on Amazon. I'm not sure what that situation is on other platforms.
Yeah, as of now, ebooks don't need ISBNs, and I believe audiobooks don't need them yet either. But it's just a matter of time before they are. And so again, I like to get them just to make, again, look more professional. So that's just my personal preference. But yeah, I agree. Buying in bulk, if you can afford it, is absolutely going to be more advantageous, because you get a bigger discount.
Definitely.
Because I think here in the US, when you buy through Balker, one ISBN is $125. And so when once you can buy in bulk of 10s or 100 or whatever, it definitely gets a lot cheaper. The more you go.
I think that was roughly what it was here. I think one was about £100, if I remember correctly. I don't know now, but it's a big difference to buy it for 100 and to buy it for £3. Of course, you have to buy in bulk. So
in bulk, right?
You have to think in advance, how many books am I going to publish realistically? So it might be that you just need 10. But I feel now that I'm going through them quite quickly.
Well, because like you said, it really depends. I mean, because it's not just how many books you're going to publish, but how many different formats you're going to publish.
Exactly.
Are you going to have a hardcover? That's another ISBN. Are you going to do an ebook and give it an ISBN? Well, there's another one. Are you going to do a travel size version of it? Well, there's another one. And so it really, it's not just a matter of how many books are you going to do, but how many different formats of each book are you going to do. And so you definitely want to keep that in mind. But when I was first started buying my own, I just did them in increments of 10, because I didn't want to really commit to 100 right away. And then I just paid attention to how fast those 10 went. And then I'm like, okay, maybe I should up it and get 100.
Yeah, definitely recommend to get them in bulk if you're planning on publishing more. Right. But so those are the platforms that I've kind of heard of: IngramSpark, Draft2Digital. I've heard of Lulu. The only problem with Lulu, I heard was that they take a long time to deliver the books. So I know you can integrate them with Shopify as well, so that's a good thing. So I haven't got any experience with Lulu. And the other one I heard a lot about was Book Vault, and they're in the UK. So that's another one I should look into just to see what they're doing. But that's about it. Have you got any others in mind that you can think of?
Well, I mean, we covered quite a few of them. Book Vault, I haven't worked with them yet. I did have a meeting with them, but haven't gone any further than that. Other than that, like I said, Barnes and Noble I've used once or twice, but really the big ones that I use the most frequently is KDP, obviously, and then I do use Lulu, especially for my spiral bound. Especially if you want to sell off your website, you can get a great deal of a much higher royalty, and it integrates with whether you're using Shopify or use their API. It integrate, and that's completely free to use to integrate in. And obviously IngramSpark, but Draft to Digital is the big aggregator that I use. Another aggregate option is Publish Drive. Publish Drive is a bit different in that they are an aggregate like Draft to Digital, but they don't charge, they don't take any of your royalties. Instead, you pay a fee, a monthly fee to be on their platform, and that's where they get paid. Okay. So, but the good thing is like you get 100% of the royalties that come in. So it's really different than any other platform I've ever worked with. And so, so that's another option would be Publish Drive. And that really, and they have different options, pricing options and tiers, depending on what your business model is and how big your business is and what you plan to do in the future. So if that's something you think you might be interested in, I would just go to Publish Drive and check out their pricing and just look at the tiers that they have and see if any of that really suits you. I used Publish Drive before they went to this new model. I haven't used them since, just because it doesn't really work with what my my publishing plan is with my business. But I know that there's a lot of people that do use it, and they're very happy with it, and they're very happy to get 100% royalty, which is something is unheard of anywhere else. So
what about
so
the
those
printing
are all
costs? Obviously, they would be deducted, wouldn't they? Printing costs.
I don't know if Publish Drive is yet doing print. I think it may be all ebook.
Okay.
Again, I haven't used them in a couple of years, so I can't speak 100% to that. But the ones that I use frequently are KDP, Draft to Digital, Lulu not as much, just because I haven't been doing a lot of spiral bound, and then Ingram. So those are the big ones that I use, but mainly KDP and Draft to Digital. And Draft to Digital, they just over the last couple of years really started with their print, and so as much as they've accomplished already, I'm really excited to see what more they have up their sleeves when it comes to specifically their print. But I mean, I put my ebooks through their or my children's book ebooks I put through them as well.
Yeah, let's hope they do color soon so that we can have a wider range even. So you would say that with Amazon, IngramSpark, Draft to Digital, they're the really main ones that you need to go wide, to publish your books on different platforms. And would you say you should publish on all of them or just two of them? What's your opinion about that?
Well, I personally, I would just say I would go with two at the most. And since we are talking about Amazon alternatives, I would say probably, if that were me, I would, to be honest, I probably would do, if I wasn't doing KDP, I would probably do Lulu for the like, because many of my books are children's books, or their no content, low content puzzle books, that kind of thing. So I would probably do the print through Lulu, because that can they'll still sell on Amazon. And then I would do the global distribution of it. I would do with Draft to Digital, with the ebook, to go wide that way. Just because, I mean, especially like I said, if you're doing children's books or whatever, having your children's books in libraries that they can check out digitally, it's a no-brainer for me.
Definitely. That's really interesting. But they would be then in color, wouldn't they, if they're ebooks? It's only the
right. Just the ebooks are in color, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the only issue with Draft to Digital is just it's the weight of the paper that they use.
Yeah.
Can't accept the color, but the ebooks are great in color.
Yeah.
And again, you've got the distributions to libraries, and I know we didn't really talk about it too much, but the audiobooks, they work through Findaway Voices. Findaway Voices is amazing for audiobooks. Great pricing options, as well as just great talent that they have there. And Findaway Voices is an aggregate for audiobooks.
Great. Okay.
So they send it, they're not just on, one platform. So, but I could talk about audiobooks in a whole nother episode.
We should.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to look into next.
Yeah. I've definitely done many audiobooks in my time. Right.
That's really interesting. I think, apart from the fact that it's more difficult for low content books, because obviously, and I think IngramSpark don't accept low content books, but they accept some types of low content. If they're medium content, as people say now, I don't even know what that is anymore. But if it's something where your buyer still has to write in them, but there's more content and more readable content, right. I think maybe they still accept that, because I think I heard somebody say that they do publish low content books with IngramSpark, and they haven't had any problems. So I think there are some alternatives to Amazon out there, and we have to think about that these days, because there are so many account terminations that you hear of. I haven't had a problem with it yet, but you hear of so many that it does make you a little bit frightened, because you think, wow, this is one of my income streams, and if I lose that, what are the alternatives? And I think that we've discovered today that there are alternatives, and they're quite viable as well, from what I can see.
I think the big thing is you just said, this is one of my income streams, but for many people, it's their only income stream. Yeah. And it's never a good idea to put all your eggs in one basket, as they say. You always want to diversify, and again, never be, because remember, unless you're on your own website and that's where you're selling from, anything else, you're in somebody else's sandbox, which means you have to play by their rules, and also means that they have control of your business, And so, the proof is with these, KDP terminations. People think, oh, that's my business. No, the KDP clearly had, control of your business, because if they shut down your account, where's your business?
That's it.
And so I absolutely think that and you don't necessarily, I mean, it's definitely a viable option. I've done it many times, where I publish the same book on multiple platforms, like we just talked about. But even if you don't want to do that, publishing books on different platforms, so it doesn't have to be the same book on multiple platforms. I'm just saying, I strongly advise not to publish all of your books on just one platform.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I've learned quite a lot today in this podcast. So this was a little bit new for me as well, even though I've tried it out today. And I will keep, obviously, people informed about what's happening to the book.
Right.
But it's been a really good experience so far. So I'm glad that you've had all that experience that I haven't had, so that I've learned something today as well. Yeah.
Well, this has been another great Mastermind, Nuria. Once again, a huge thank you to all our listeners and viewers who came to tag along. If you enjoyed today's Mastermind, please consider following or subscribing to the podcast, and maybe even leave us a review and let us know what you thought. Until next week, I'm Keith Wheeler.
And I'm Nuria Corby.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining the Mastermind today. Be sure to follow the podcast on your platform of choice and tell a friend who would enjoy it too. Your support is greatly appreciated. This has been the Masterminding Success Podcast.